And hello, viewers slash listeners. Welcome back to another episode of the Magic Morning Wood. With me, as always, I'm your host Ron. Let me turn some light on so you can see me. And with me,
Ah!
still in his robe, bright light. Still in his robe is.
Toe Jam Terry, how's it going?
Okay. Thanks for dressing up for us, Terry.
No
Yeah,
worries. Only for you, you know that, Ron.
yeah, right. Yeah, how's it going, Terry?
Well, I'm slightly disconcerted because I had no idea, but I was listening to Weird Al. Apparently, there's people starving in Japan. I didn't know this. Uh, so I'm quite worried, which explains why rice has gone flying off the shelves recently, right? Yeah.
Is that the first time you'd heard that song?
No, no, no. In fact, we've discussed it before, and we've discussed
No.
it on this. Like,
Oh,
what
did
the
we?
fuck was
Oh,
he on about? Yeah,
yeah,
because I think as kids, we probably didn't question it, but
yeah,
after growing up, I was thinking, what the fuck is he on about?
yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like a red flag now, but I think I had to do with I'm sure the rhyming structure. I think something like that. I think whatever.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's interesting. I don't know if anyone's ever asked him what's all that about, Weird Al. Incidentally, have you noticed in your local supermarket, are the rice shelves empty? They've been panic buying rice here.
I've heard that, but no, I've heard people saying that, but I haven't noticed it. I haven't.
Oh, okay. I went to my local the other day and I was quite, I looked over, fuck, there's no rice. Where's all the rice gone? And yeah, so yeah, people have been panic buying rice for no
And
good reason.
because of what?
Well, we had a slightly poor harvest apparently last year, so there's like slightly less rice than usual, but it's not going to last long. And Japan has loads of reserves of rice anyway. So it was
Oh,
just a panic thing, like after an earthquake, all the toilet paper and water disappears, right?
right.
Yeah, it'll be back. It'll be
Hmm.
back. It might be even back now as we speak. I'm not sure.
And yeah, so anyway, back to your original point about kids starving in Japan. And
Hmm.
of course, it's because it rhymes with man and raisin bran, of course, right? So it's an Asian country where people are, I guess, yeah. So I think, yeah, as you mentioned, probably no, you don't really think about it that much if you're not living in Japan, right? And also it
Hmm.
rhymes. I guess it fits the rhyming and
Well,
structure.
also I was thinking because we were kids, so we didn't know anything about what was going. But a grown adult at that time, even if they weren't particularly interested, I mean, it was the time of the rising sun and Japan's going to buy everything up and everything. So Japan was pretty much even your average American who didn't think about these things would have known of Japan as a
Right.
wealthy,
Yeah.
affluent country.
Although, to
So
be fair,
did like a
there
gag.
are starving people everywhere. There are starving kids everywhere. So I'm sure there are starving kids even in Japan.
Yeah, but it is one of those things I do wonder, is it he made a mistake or is it some kind of weird Al gag or something? Or
It'd be a weird old gag, but also I think it's just because it rhymes. Literally, it was a country that rhymed with man and raisin bran.
right, but
I
yes,
think you don't need to think that hard about it. I think so.
maybe. And also I suppose if you were gonna, because it's a popular song as well, like if you did choose, if you right, I'm gonna rewrite this and change the rhyming and you chose Ethiopia, like
Uh,
there was, but then that would be considered in quite bad taste because there are starving people in Ethiopia.
but then what rhymes with Ethiopia?
Well, no, but what I'm saying is, if they'd have done that, eat your tapioca because they're starving Ethiopia. There we go. Something like that.
No, I don't think so. I
Awesome.
think I
No, no.
think Weird Al would say no, thank you. That's
But
not
the point is, he wouldn't have done it anyway, right? If he'd have discovered, because that would be too like, oh, there are actually starving people in Ethiopia, so that's not funny. You see what I mean? So
right.
it's
Sure.
funnier
Yeah,
if
it
you
could be that.
choose somewhere that people aren't starving.
People are really, yeah, generally
Yeah,
starving. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Because
So if you haven't guessed by now, our we're as you mentioned, we talk about movies, and so obviously based on our conversation, our first movie we talk about today is the movie Weird, the Weird Al story. Is it the Weird Al story? Yeah, the Weird Al, yeah, the Al Yankovic story,
yeah,
the Al Yankovic story. Yeah, so
with
we're
the manual
reacting
connection from what was the last
connection
film?
from what was it?
Nebraska.
Nebraska, thank you. Yes, Nebraska, which is because it has what's his face? Will Forte appears in this
Right.
briefly.
What was he in this?
He was in the he was remember when they go to the record producers and Weird Al is there as the record producer?
Oh yes, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then it's the other guy, the one who's like, "Oh, you're such a hack and you're terrible." And Weird Al's kind of like the real Weird Al is kind of like, "Okay, all right, calm it down, right?"
I
The other
see
guy is like, "You're terrible, you suck." That one, that's weird. That was Will Forte, yeah. So
that hilarious scene. I remember. Yes.
anyway, yes. So, yeah, this was from 2022, a couple years ago, and starring Daniel Radcliffe of Harry Potter fame as Weird Al, and also having has lots and lots and lots of cameos.
Certainly
Uh,
does. Yeah.
yeah, it's a cameo. Rainn Wilson pops up as Dr. Demento, Weird Al's kind of mentor. Lin-Manuel Miranda pops up as like a doctor, a surgeon. Um, there's like I don't know, who's the girl played Madonna? I forget her name. She's
I
famous.
forget as well. And Patton
Yeah, yeah.
Oswalt, isn't it?
Patton Oswalt. Who else?
I tell you who I like. My favorite person in it, because I really like him, is
Will
Toby
Forte,
Huss.
of course. Yeah.
Toby Huss plays Weird Al's dad.
Who does, sorry?
Toby Huss. I like him.
Toby Huss. Yeah. Okay.
I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of his. Uh,
Yeah. Emo Phillips shows up as Salvador
oh
Dali,
yes,
but
yes.
not as Emo Phillips.
Because of course back in the day he was in UHF.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
Jack
Conan
Black
O'Brien was in there
plays
as Andy
Wolfman.
Warhol.
Yeah.
Uh,
Jack Black plays Wolfman Jack.
Jack Black. Yes.
Anyway, a lot of famous people.
Yes. Other famous people kind of pop up. Josh Groban has a cameo as like a waiter.
I don't know who that is, but
He's a really famous singer.
okay. What
Yeah,
was his
he's like,
name?
Josh Groban. He's like,
Josh
you
Groban.
raise me up. He's like one of those like really like guys who consider like having one of the best voices of like he sings these kind of like motivational, sometimes kind of vaguely Christian, but also kind of like almost operatic kind of pop songs kind of thing. So
I'm rushing out to get his album right now.
he's very, very famous. Yeah. So anyway,
Right.
uh yeah, so this is as you can tell by the title, the a biopic or sort of a mock
Yeah, it's
biopic.
not at all
Yeah,
really, is
it's
it?
not at all, right? So there's a couple, I think, kernels of truth there, but of course, it's for the most part, as Weird Al's music is a satire or a parody of pop songs. This is a movie that's a satire parody of biopics, right? So it sort of sends up this kind of genre. Has a lot of kind of like the tropes that you would find in these types of movies, but of course, making fun of them and stuff like that. And yeah, so of course it takes the idea that shows him from when he was a child, when he first got his accordion, which was apparently truthfully actually got it from a traveling salesman or a door-to-door salesman. Apparently that part was true, but then his dad like just like beating the crap out of the door-to-door salesman. I think that was made up. Um, yeah, and then it goes through his sort of he's living with three roommates that ends up being his band, and he sort of like has this aha moment where he's has comes up with his first song, which is My Bologna, and records it in a bus station bathroom, which apparently was true as well, but he did it by himself. And then sort of his rise to fame over doing these parody songs, right? And so and the whole time kind of like, winking at the audience and also kind of like, making fun of himself a little bit. Sort of he knows that he knows what he is, and he certainly doesn't take himself seriously ever, right? So Weird Al is, he knows that's the good thing about Weird Al is that he never takes himself seriously. So
And along the
um
way, he marries Madonna.
I don't think they married. They just sort of like became,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So and
An
they were
item,
a
yes.
couple, yeah, like a power
Which
couple,
which
and then
didn't
he
happen.
assassinates what's the guy he becomes like a spy, and he kills who's the cocaine, the Colombian
Oh yes,
cocaine,
Pablo Escobar.
Pablo Escobar, yeah, Pablo Escobar,
Yes,
yeah. So
yes. And of
yeah,
course, spoiler alert, gets assassinated at the end himself, which of course also didn't happen.
of
He's
course it happened, of course, right, yes.
unfortunately still alive making songs. Um,
Yeah, and he's actually as a cameo in this movie as
yes,
the record producers that doesn't want to
yeah,
give himself. Yeah, and so of course the whole thing is just gags and makes it's just making things fun of the whole idea of biopics. And and even right down to the music. I thought the music was quite good in this because it really got like the kind of like the overwrought sentimentality of this kind of genre, but in this kind of very really ridiculous way. So I thought that was quite well done. Um, and he I've totally lost my train of thought, but anyway, but yeah, so I'm guessing from your reaction you didn't care for this much, did you,
No,
Clive?
no, I know you like it. Well, so with this one, I remember you seeing it when it was new, and you
Hmm.
liked it. I remember you saying it to me, and also you said to me something along the lines of because the difference is you quite like Weird Al, and I've never liked Weird Al
Hmm.
particularly. But I think you said something along the lines of, well, because it's not really about Weird Al exactly, that there's a
Hmm.
potential that you might like it anyway, right?
Hmm.
Plus, I was kind of a little bit interested by the idea of Daniel Radcliffe playing
Hmm.
Vidal because Daniel Radcliffe's um, one of those interesting actors in a way because I really do appreciate how he's done the thing that he's set for life pretty much right since he was a kid.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
He doesn't have to do anything in the same way as Macaulay Culkin fucked off to Paris and just paints or whatever he does
Hmm.
all day
Sure.
now, right? But 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 he's used his fame to get films that otherwise wouldn't get made or wouldn't get made
Sure.
with just
Yeah.
Swiss Army Man, of course, being the
Yeah, and to be
yeah,
fair, I mean, I just handed to Daniel Radcliffe is that especially, I mean, when you pick a kid who's like 10 years old to become like one of the biggest stars in the world and just basically lay his life out for him,
mm,
right? I mean, I mean, there's of course several risks inherent in that. One, not the least being that maybe the kid doesn't know how to act. I mean, he's only 10 years
right,
old.
right.
But to be fair, Daniel Radcliffe is a very, very good actor,
He is good,
and he really, really knows his craft. And despite the fact that, I mean, he could have been the shittiest actor ever because you never know when you're 10, but he
right.
just becomes famous because of what movies he was in. But he's actually took the time to really learn his craft, and he's really quite a good actor. So I have to hand it to him
Yeah.
for really, yeah.
Plus, as well, he
He is,
seems to have, I mean, I'm sure he's had
just,
some long, dark nights of the soul along the way, but he
sure.
seems to have handled that level of fame handed to him at a young age quite well. He
Yeah, for
seems like a
sure.
relatively
And he
balanced
hasn't
guy.
gone into the whole kind of like, self-destructive stuff that a lot of kid actors
No,
do,
no.
and also he chooses really interesting projects, I
Yeah,
mean,
so
like
that's the main thing is I appreciate that because he
he
could
was in
have just
Women in
retired.
Black. I thought I really liked too
Yeah,
when he was,
he could have just
yeah,
retired or he could have just kept aiming for the hit movies or whatever. But no,
sure,
he
right.
goes, and they're not always great, but there are definitely some movies that have definitely got made just because he said, sure, I'll do that. And as soon
Yeah.
as you can go to an investor and oh, by the way, I've got Daniel Radcliffe on board. Oh, how much money
Oh,
do you need? Yeah,
how much money you want? Yeah, okay, I'll give
yeah.
it to
So, so I, so that's it. So there was that going for it. Plus, our friend Darren was mentioned recently that he really liked it, and that
you.
meant even more to me just because me and Darren's sense of humor align a lot closer than yours and mine do, I think.
Right.
So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, and then you chose it, and I thought, brilliant. I don't even have to because it's the kind of thing I'd circle around for years without actually.
Right.
Great, he's pulled the trigger. I don't have to think about it. Let's just watch it. So I did have I went into it, even though I don't like Weird Al, I didn't go into it as a grouch. I did go into it expecting to like it. And yeah, no, it's just not my sense of humor, I think, is basically. There's like
Mm.
one laugh I got out of it, and that's again Toby, but that's just because it's Toby Hurst. There's like when he explains towards the end of the film, he tells him his son all about like, well, actually, I played the accordion when I was a kid and all that or whatever.
Mm.
And then Daniel Radcliffe has, he says, I had no idea. And he goes, of course you didn't. I just said, I never
Told you.
told you. Yeah.
Told you.
And I thought that was delivered quite well. But yeah, I could have done with more Toby Huston. And any bits with Toby Huston I enjoyed. I like him. But I don't know. It seems like I understand Weird Al's no like he understands that what he does is very limited, right?
Hmm.
he
Yeah, I mean,
just
even says it out loud. It goes a very niche or whatever.
yeah,
There was like one line that was repeated a few times, which is like, "You'll be not the best accordion player, but at least the most well known in a very limited
yeah.
appeal genre or something like that." Right? He says,
And
right?
also
So
what he does is quite it's because it's the kind of thing you did in school with your mates, right? Was change the names to pop songs with put
sure, yeah,
boys
yeah.
in the so it's not like so he I understand that he gets that and the idea of making a biopic where that's inflated to be incredibly important and stuff. It's yeah, it's but it's just yeah, it parodies the thing, but it's that thing sometimes when just parodying the thing and not adding anything to it, I don't find funny. It's like, I see what you've done there, but it's not making me laugh. Like I understand what you've done there, but it's not. And I suppose it doesn't help that I've never really liked Weird Al, mainly because he calls himself Weird Al. We've discussed this before, but if he was just Al Yankovic, that would be okay. But he's a Weird Al. I'm like, you're not weird at all. There's a great line in a Fall song. You don't have to be weird to be weird, and I think that's the thing. I don't like weirdness that um introduces itself. Like, and it's
Well, I
not.
think that's the point. Is he's drawing attention to the fact that he's maybe not so weird, even though he's called weird, right? And then I think he's doing exactly what you're saying. Is that he's just doing it, playing it,
Yeah,
putting it.
but I don't think he's been doing that all along. I because Dr. Demento as well is another example. Like Dr. Demento is an institution, I understand, and a lot of the music that Dr. Demento championed and played and stuff, I actually enjoy and stuff. But I've never liked the context of the Dr. Demento show because it is that weird. This is going to be weird, and it's like automatically puts me in opposition to like I like weirdness to just the context of it is has to be banal or normal or something. And then like, but if someone's going, hey, this is going to be weird, straight like the John Candy character in
I was just gonna say this.
Club of Horrors,
I was
like
like,
weird,
like,
yeah.
yeah, I was like, do you? I actually had never really thought about this. Do you think the John Candy character was based off of Dr. Demento?
I think something along those
Yeah.
lines, yeah.
We're talking for those who don't know, talking about Little Shop of
Little
Horrors.
Horrors, the remake, yeah,
Yeah.
the musical version, yeah. So I think that's the thing is I have a slight problem with weirdness that sets itself up as being weird. I kind of like someone sneaking up behind me and hitting me over the back of the head with weirdness rather than announcing it, if you see what I mean. So yeah, so Weird Al isn't weird. Um, so that's a slight problem I have. But yeah, it's just yeah. But mind you, I mean, it's not terrible either. I suppose I just didn't laugh, and I wanted to. I really wanted to. I really wanted to come on and be positive about it, but I cannot tell a lie, Ron. I just, and I even had to put a few drinks in me as well first to set me up. So I was
Mhm.
primed. It was Saturday night even. It was my precious Saturday night drinking time, and I thought, okay, give it to me. And unfortunately, it didn't really deliver. You still love it on second?
Yeah, I laughed even more this time, if not.
Really, you laughed all the way through?
Yeah. Because I knew what was coming, but I still really appreciated it. I appreciated the tone of it. I think they really just nailed exactly. I think maybe you just again with a parody, you have to have some sort of knowledge or appreciation of the subject matter that's being parodied. And if you just don't like it, then I think you're already primed to not
Yeah,
like it. Right? So,
yeah,
but I mean. I say that with a caveat because that's not necessarily always true because I've always really disliked, for example, like the scary movie franchise, where the parodies,
yes.
horror movies, but most of the movies that they parody I like, but I don't like the parody
Yeah,
itself,
but
right? So,
scary movies are
yeah,
rubbish. That's
yeah,
why
they're
you don't.
parody, they're
Yeah,
really, really bad.
yeah,
And so it's a really, really fine line as to parodying something and actually having it be funny
yeah,
versus just like exactly what you're talking about, like, okay, yeah, that's that thing,
yeah,
right? And then and I don't know, I think in this case they got it. I think they got it correct exactly, right? So it's like they did stuff, the scary movie franchise and those all the that movies of that ilk, they were all kind of like, oh, they're cringeworthy when you watch
a
them.
lot of them
Like
are
really
awful. Yeah,
trying to be funny. Whereas
yeah,
this one, I just thought it was very not effortless, but it was it. hit the right notes exactly the way it was supposed to. It really, I think it was pitch perfect most of the time, right? So I think really, and it definitely never let you think that it was real, which is the point, right? So, and I think it really did everything it was supposed to do. I thought Daniel Radcliffe was awesome as
He's
I,
good. Yeah, yeah,
he was
I'll
really
give him
good.
that.
I thought I sent the clip to you. Did you watch
Funny
it
or
was a
Die, that's how
yeah,
it started life as a, well, that's the
yeah,
thing as well, I think, was watching that made a lot more sense to me because that's the joke, right? And that's
right,
two,
yeah,
3 minutes, and I thought, you've done it. Like that's it.
right, sure, yeah.
That was enough.
I
Half
I yeah,
half
I
of
get
that was
that,
enough.
but and it was the same person who did that fake trailer that made the movie, the director,
Right, Eric Appel. Yeah.
Eric Appel, yeah. But I don't know, I thought he successfully extended it. I thought it was still good though. I thought it was I really all the whole things with like the like these like aha moments of like epiphanies and stuff. It's hard to explain without actually having like clips to show. But yeah, I just think they really, really nailed it. I thought they got everyone. I really liked the pool scene with all the people doing like the cameos as other people. I thought that was really funny. It has one of my I can't even explain why, but it's one of my all-time favorite sight gags, which is he's on stage at one point with he's shaved off his mustache. You think he's shaved off his mustache,
Hmm.
and he's doing whatever it is, and he's doing something on stage, and he comes off stage, he reaches up, and he peels off like a piece of like fake skin that's covered his mustache, revealing the mustache. So rather than peeling off a fake mustache, he peels off skin to reveal the mustache. Just I don't know why, but that makes me laugh so hard. Like just I just think it's so funny. Right. A friend of mine when we were kids, we used to talk about like what just like a great joke would be like when one of those old mystery shows or where you'd have to like someone like peel off their mask and it would be revealing who the real culprit was, peeling it off and it's just the same person with a mustache, and then they peel off the mustache, and it's the same person. Just some of that. It's just really dumb jokes, but just makes me laugh so hard. It really tickles me. I think I mentioned this with um, Wet Hot American Summer, where just like jokes like where they throw things off camera and a cat goes right, like just really dumb stuff like that. Just
Right.
always makes me laugh, right? So, and I don't know, yeah, I can't really explain it because they're kind of like
Well, no, it can make me laugh.
yeah, yeah,
Oddly enough, I recently rewatched Airplane for the first time in
mm,
ages because I read the book about the making of it,
okay.
which I think you would. I might have even sent you a text to recommend it to you.
Okay.
You would really love that book. You can get a Kindle of it. It's
Send it to me again. I may have lost it. So
yeah, it's really funny. Yeah, it's just like the making of Airplane. It's by the people
yeah.
who wrote it. It's by the Zaz team. It's a really and it's all about how they started Kentucky Fried Theatre and made Kentucky Fried Movie. Everything leading up to Airplane. It's a really quite fascinating read and quite funny. And then I watched Airplane again, and that's really still works. I was quite surprised. And there's bits in that as well. Like if you remember, what's his name? Stephen. Is his name Stephen Stucker? He's the guy who turns up like in the latter part of the movie. He's like the camp guy working in the like the control tower. Do you remember him?
Not off the top of my head.
He
Not
he,
not
he
the actor's
died.
name anyway.
He died when he was quite young. I think it's his name,
You
Stephen.
keep talking, I'll look it up. Yeah, Steven
Stephen
Stucker. Yeah.
Stucker. Stephen Stucker. Yeah, and so the stuff with him is just hilarious, and it's totally like it's sometimes it's entirely has nothing to do with the movie at all, right? Like
Mm,
he comes up with these ad libs and what the hell is he talking? But he is absolutely hilarious and he totally steals the second half.
mm,
And in a similar way, like you're saying, it's like a tone. Like he
yeah.
says things and they're funny. I have no idea why they're funny, but
Mm,
he's got funny bones, right? He's just
right.
funny.
Yeah.
Um, no, but I would highly recommend reading that and watching Airplane again.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, I'd say I'm a little disappointed that you didn't enjoy it more because I was really hoping you'd
so
like
am
it. Yeah.
I. So am I. And
Yeah. Yeah.
just
So yeah,
just for
it's
context, I will say, yeah, it's nowhere near as fucking awful as those scary movie.
oh yeah. I
Don't get
mean,
me
yeah,
wong. Don't
it's
get me wrong.
hard
It's
to.
nowhere
So
near those.
yeah,
Those are just yeah, they are
yeah.
really
Bottom of the barrel.
fucking dreadful. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I will agree with that. But yeah, I mean, as I said, I think I think the reason I like it is because it actually makes me laugh. Whether or not it made you laugh is neither here nor there. But also I think it's the thing is that parody is such a hard thing to get correct, right? It either goes to the cringy part or you get it just it has to be right on the fine line in order to get it right. And you know, I think this one got it right. I think it got it right. So
Yeah, I
whether
would.
you appreciate parody, I think is probably the big thing. I
Yes,
think.
I would
So,
concede. I
yeah.
would concede that that's correct. I think this is one of those films that I'm quite happy to like. I'm not going to argue my case or anything like that because I will concede this is not the film for me, I think. And I can totally see how I'm almost not qualified. I tried. I have to admit I didn't find it funny, but I don't think people who do find it funny are at fault for finding it funny. I think
Right.
it's this was not designed for
Mm,
me, right? This was
right.
not made for me.
Yeah, but I mean, I think as we talked about before, I grew up liking Weird Al.
Yes.
But I mean, to be fair, not everything Weird Al does is a parody of other songs. He does do his own original songs.
Yeah.
And that's one of the conceits of this movie, which is that Eat It was actually the original song and Beat It was a
Right.
parody of Eat It, right? Which is, I think pretty funny, right? So I mean, everyone knows that Eat It was the parody of Beat It, but to be able to try to with the tongue firmly in cheek, because obviously everyone knows that it's not. But by saying, "Oh, Eat It came first," it was just that became part of the fun,
Yeah.
So
I mean, we have our own conceptually, we have basically the same private joke here at home, whereas on Thursdays, I always sing what I claim is my original composition. Hey, Mokuyobi, Mokuyobi, Mokuyobi. Hey, Mokuyobi. And then claim that the makers of the Macarena stole my Mokuyobi is Thursday in Japanese, by the way, for those who don't know. See, and I think as I can tell, Ron, by your reaction, comedy gold, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
great, it's
Oh,
great.
there we go. Your reaction to my hilarious gag was kind of my reaction to this
Uh,
film. So yeah, it takes all kinds, right? Hey,
right, yeah,
Mokuyobi, Mokuyobi,
yeah,
Mokuyobi. Hey,
yeah,
Mokuyobi. It'll grow on
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Well, there's no accounting for taste, so I guess, but
Oh, brilliant.
I mean, I appreciate it. So if you have watched any of our other videos and you like some of the same comedy movies that I have, you
Yes, if
probably
you're
like it.
Team Ron,
Yeah,
check
you'll
it
like it
out.
too.
If
Yeah.
you're Team Clive, just yeah,
I.e., have no sense of humor, then
watch
don't
Bat
watch.
Pussy again or something.
Yeah,
Some classic like that.
watch the what is that called? The anal something or other, the
Enema Bandit.
Enema Bandit. Yeah, there you go.
Now
Yeah.
there's a comedy. Okay then. Right.
Anyway, I'm glad I watched it again because even the second time I liked it. So yeah, so I'm
Okay.
glad I watched it again.
So, also in the cast of Nebraska was Stacy Keach. So I decided to go. Stacy Keach was my connective tissue.
Mhm.
I went for a film that I'd never seen before, but I'd always wanted to. And I figured this was a chance to give it a go because it always sounded quite interesting. And this is The Traveling Executioner from 1970, directed by Jack Smite from a screenplay from quite a young guy at the time, Gary Bates, and he was like in his 20s, I think. He wrote this and like an episode of Mission Impossible and an episode of Night Gallery and then nothing else. Surprisingly, because as soon as I finished with this, I wanted to look up the screenwriter to see if he'd written any other movies because I think it's quite an interesting a screenplay, right? But yeah, so Stacy Keach. This is set in 1918. It doesn't say specifically, but as the film goes on, you figure out that it's during the First World War, right? And
Hmm.
and
But
the
yeah, you can tell kind of like there's like the cars are really like Model T Ford kind of
yeah, yeah,
so that
and they mentioned the Kaiser and the war in Europe and stuff. So
right.
you eventually figure out it's somewhere between 1914 and 1919. But apart the original film poster had 1918 on it, so it is 1918. Stacy Keach plays a character called Jonas Candide, and he's kind of like a we find out spoilers by the way as we go here. He's like
Mm.
a former convict and kind of a bit of a snake oil kind of hustler type, right? Gift of the gab type. and he travels the south um, with a truck with his own electric chair in it. So he's kind of like he's an executioner for hire, right? And he turns up.
He's uh, how do you put it? He's like a traveling executioner.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah,
What a
there,
great
yeah,
title for a film that
yeah,
would be. Yeah.
yeah. There you go.
So he turns up at these prisons and yeah, he puts people out to their misery, I guess, for
Which,
100
which I, was a kind of
dollars
interesting
pop.
thing
Yeah.
because when you think about it, I mean, obviously in the early 1900s, prisons probably didn't have enough money to have their own electric chair or their own like capital punishment method of
Mm.
of death, I guess you call it, right? So yeah, so it makes sense that they would hire them out privately, right? So whoever has one, right? So, but
Yeah, to be
never
honest,
thought about it.
I don't think it is based on. I don't think there is any reality to it, but
Oh,
it's just about believable enough, right?
hmm.
I don't think he'd be able to, because I'm assuming he's using the engine of his truck, which I don't think would be enough power to generate that much electricity to kill
I
someone.
think he looked like he was attaching it into the prison electricity. I think there was some sort of connection. Wasn't he
Oh,
doing
it
that?
was
Or
running straight. It was running straight from the chair out to his truck, right? And that's where he
oh,
had.
was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I don't know. So I'm not sure if it adds up the size there, but it doesn't matter. Obviously, yeah, like you said, it kind of passes muster. The suspension
Hmm.
of disbelief is doable, right?
Right,
You kind of buy the conceit, right?
right.
Um, and yeah, and he's very good. He does this whole puts the prisoners at ease, and he talks about the afterlife, the fields of ambrosia, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And uh, there was a musical, there was a stage musical based on this film in the 90s called Fields of Ambrosia, uh,
Hmm.
a musical. This is not a musical, and yes, and so that's what he does. And then Mariana Hill, she's like a German immigrant on death row. Um, she's had a few stays of execution, but she's getting nearer to her death. And her brother is also condemned to death as well. We see her brother being killed, right? In the electric chair. And I don't think that we're ever told what they did, right? We don't know what their crime was.
No, I don't think so.
No,
But it's interesting that they were chosen to be German during the First World War, so I assume it's
yeah,
some sort of connection with
yeah,
that.
there's
So,
obviously some sort of prejudice in, but I'm guessing what we're supposed to be thinking about here maybe is the Rosenbergs being executed in the 50s, right? For being selling, supposedly selling atomic bomb secrets to the commies.
right.
I guess that's what the illusion is there
Hmm.
supposed to be. And but yeah, Mariana Hill is who interestingly, I didn't know this before, because I knew her from some other films, but she's Stormin Norman Schwarzkopf's cousin.
Oh,
If you remember him from Desert Storm fame, right? The army
hmm. Yeah.
general who briefly became a bit of a celebrity. She says her original name is Mariana Schwarzkopf, apparently.
Mm.
Um,
Of course, she was in the Godfathers series, right? So,
Yeah, she's in. I can't remember which one she's in. She's in the second one, maybe. Um,
yeah, she's in the second one, yeah, but I
and
think she was in.
she was in an Elvis movie, like really early on. She was an Elvis girl, and
No.
kind of interesting career. She's in some interesting films like The Baby and stuff like that. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, and yeah, so she kind of seduces the Stacy Keach character, right?
Hmm.
And he claims her ass is just too good to cook. So he has this elaborate make it up as he goes along scheme involving seeming as if his electric chair has been stolen, but he's hidden it away. So basically he wants to get the girl, but he also wants to get his payday, right?
Hmm.
And that's and it's yeah, so it's a kind of a little bit of a kind of a farcical
Hmm.
kind of comedy. The tone set early on where when her brother is executed and he isn't dead, and then you try and put him back in the chair, and
Hmm.
so it's got this kind of very farcical kind of
I would say farcical. I'd say dark comedy. It's sort of
Well, what I was going to say, it's I agree with you. I think it's actually a surprisingly very cynical black pun, but it's kind of disguised as a farce, right? Because it's got this
mm,
it's got a big Jerry Goldsmith kind of
mm.
Dixieland jazz score, and
Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
but by the time the film rolls around and you get to the kind of end, and yeah, you realized, fuck, this is a dark fucking
Yeah.
cynical,
It's really dark, actually. Yeah. The whole thing. Yeah.
but it's kind of disguised as a slightly kind of knockabout, because Stacey's just fucking great in this film as well, I think. But he gives this very broad performance, and and it's and you've got Bud Cort in there as well, right?
Yeah.
Who's always he's kind of he becomes his apprentice, doesn't he?
Yeah.
You've got Emmett Walsh, who's always
Yes. Always good to see him.
and if you've ever wanted to see Emmett Walsh's bare ass,
Huh?
this is the
There
film
it
for you.
is.
Um, he has a surprisingly nice, firm set of buttocks on him as well. Oh, he did at that time. He
In
passed
1970, and yeah.
earlier this year, right? I think he died. Emmett Walsh.
Yeah, I think yeah, in March. Mhm.
Big fan of Emmett whenever
Yeah.
you see him in things. And there's a lot of other kind of familiar character actor faces: Graham Jarvis, James Sloyan, Fred Rainey, Val Avery. I mean, yeah, there's a whole bunch of people in it. And yeah, I think that's about the size of it. I don't think I'm missing any major plot points or no, that's about the size of it. Yeah, first time watching this, and yeah, like I said, yeah, by the time I was finished, I was like, fuck, what a dark, cynical little film this was, and thoroughly engaging throughout. I really enjoyed the travel execution. I thought it was actually and quite a difficult film to see since its
Mm.
original release as well. And there's no Blu-ray of it or anything like that. It's kind of
Yeah, I kept seeing on IMDb people talk about how it's really hard to find. How
yeah,
did you find a copy of it?
fell off the back of a lorry.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
And
Okay.
it's an MGM, production as
Yeah.
well, right? It's quite a big, and it's got good production values and shot at
Mhm.
a real old prison in Alabama, which they get to blow up at the end. It's always good to see a real building being blown up in a film, right? It's kind of, and apparently they couldn't. It was so well built that apparently it still stands to this day. Like they couldn't actually bring the whole place down.
Right, right.
Um, but yeah, no, yeah, I was curious about this film, and it really lived up to its expectations for me. This is a bit of a gem. I'm really glad to have caught up with this. How about yourself, Ron? How did you get on with The Traveling Executioner?
Uh, I think I was a little more lukewarm than you were, but I did enjoy it. I thought that the conceit was really interesting. Stacey Keach was great. I think in general it kept me interested. It was watching it, but I had more trouble with the tonal shifts. I found it a little more difficult to be engaged in the like and by tonal shifts, I mean like the vast pendulum swings between like dark maudlin to like farcical humor, right? As like
Yeah,
and I think that it can be done, but I don't think they always nailed it in this movie. So I don't think that I thought the tone shifts quite jarring sometimes, and also that it didn't play out overall. I think in general, I thought it was a good concept, and I thought everyone did a pretty good job. But I think I would have changed the tone shifts a little bit more. I would have made it a little more subtle, or made it a little bit more transitions or something. But just generally speaking, I kind of felt kind of unsettled by the end. Like it didn't feel complete to me at the end.
you used
Um, mm,
unsettled there, and
mm,
I think, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
mm.
I take that fully on board, and you're quite right. It does have these kind of tonal shifts, but for me, my takeaway, the cumulatively, like I felt those tonal shifts weren't because someone didn't know what they were doing. By the time the film ended, I felt like, oh, they were supposed to be like, and I agree with you. The scenes that are very sentimental, and
Mhm.
you think, oh, and then all of a sudden it's very cynical, and but by the time it finished, it felt to me like, oh, that was the film they wanted to make, and the tonal shifts were deliberate as opposed to
Oh, yeah, I certainly don't think the tonal shifts were accidental. I
right.
just don't think they necessarily worked the way
Okay,
it was made,
okay,
right? So I just think that, and yeah, they were cumulative, but I didn't feel like by unsettled, I don't mean like I was unsettled by the story or I was purposely unsettled. I felt unsettled as if like it didn't feel like it was complete or it was finished or yeah. So I thought it felt a little wrinkly. If that makes sense. It needs to be ironed out a little bit. So
okay.
for me. So I mean, I thought generally it was an interesting story. I'd never seen anything quite like this, that's for sure.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, and CC Keach was good. I just thought I just didn't think that the huge swings in tone worked always worked, and it kind of cumulatively took away from the finished product, I think. So
yeah. It's a difficult
yeah.
area to work in for sure, and I think as well um for me, it's interesting to see a Hollywood movie doing it as well. I think because I watch a
Mm,
lot of Hong Kong films, for example, and that's kind of taken for granted in a lot of Hong Kong from the 80s and 90s, where something will be like a really kind of dark, sick,
mm.
twisted kind of rape scene, and then wah 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 comedy the
Right,
next
yeah.
minute, and there's no attempt at all to
Mm.
so it just whoa, whoa. So it's not
Well, in
quite
that
that
in that case,
fire.
it was probably meant to be like Shakespeare used comedy scenes in tragedies, which is like to lighten the
Right.
mood, like as a mood breaker for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But here
So
I didn't
so
feel
I
like
used to
I didn't feel like
yeah,
the comedy here was a mood breaker. It was just sort of like sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's
yeah.
not, and sometimes it is. It's just yeah, it didn't feel like it.
But
It was
it's
used for a
unusual for
purpose.
me to see it in this context of a Hollywood film. Like I'm used to seeing it in films of
Mm.
certain countries, if you see what I mean.
Right, right,
But
right,
seeing it
sure.
in an American
Mm.
production is kind of interesting. And for me as well, they pulled it off. So I kind of. But it's interesting you bring up the Shakespeare thing as well, right? Because it's in you think because I mean Shakespeare is so revered and been combed over, and there's different ways of doing it and stuff. And I do wonder sometimes if we have kind of not that it's not brilliant, it is brilliant, but I do wonder sometimes if we've lost sight of the way it worked. That like you're saying, like in those originally, it was just nothing too sophisticated about it. It was just we've had this, now we're gonna have a laugh. That's it,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas people don't do it like that now, right?
Mm.
Like people like they try and iron it out, like you said, to kind
Mm.
of give it a certain consistency or something. And you're thinking back in the day, maybe that's not the way it worked, right? Maybe it was just
Mm.
supposed to be, oh, that was sad that and then and that's it. That like just
Right.
gosh, you put it down. But whenever something's kind of maybe not the original, but in some way, then it you remember it as being classic or vintage or something where so it's an interesting thing to bring up that maybe yeah Shakespeare was a little bit Shakespeare's plays were maybe delivered maybe more crudely
Mm.
than maybe we like to think nowadays
Well, yeah, definitely.
possibly.
One thing people kind of forget about Shakespeare is he was a businessman, right? So he
Yeah,
he
yeah,
wrote his plays to put butts in seats, right? It
yeah,
was
yeah,
it was about, selling those tickets, right? So I mean, most of actually his plays, despite of what we think about them now as sort of like literature, at the time there was like they were the popcorn movies of the era, right? They were,
yes,
that's what they were used to make as much money as possible, right? So yeah, so definitely, yeah, there's definitely a different context from
yes.
where we see them now, right? But uh,
But on the other hand as well, we should not forget that there is a quality there as well, because I don't think in 400 years people are going to be combing over the films of Michael Bay, right? As
let's hope not, right? So, yeah.
yeah.
But I don't think they'll be combing over the traveling executioner either, right? So I think,
Well,
yeah,
that's already been forgotten
yeah, sure, yeah, right, right,
years
yeah.
later.
Well, so interestingly, why do you think, since you really, really enjoyed this movie, and I enjoyed it, I'd give it like a 6 out of 10 if I was going to rate it, so still pretty good.
Yeah,
But
no,
why
I'd
do
give
you
it
think,
higher than that. Yeah.
yeah, why do you think it's been so forgotten? Why do you think it's so hard to find?
I don't know. I mean, relative. I mean, until quite apparently, it is up on. You can see it. It's up on Amazon Prime or something like that now.
Mm.
But I think it's like just been chucked up there, like a lot of stuff has. And
Right.
yeah, there's no Blu-ray. I don't know. Apparently, it wasn't a hit when it was new.
Mhm.
So I got. But then again, a lot of films that weren't hits have been kind of recovered. And yeah, it is interesting. I don't know if it's a rights issue in some way or. It could be that it doesn't. I mean, obviously, Stacey Keach. Stacey Keach is a big name, and especially Stacey Keach in the 70s, he was in all these fascinating films, one after the other. So, and then I suppose, well, you've got the director Jack Smite. I mean, Jack Smite is a name that maybe doesn't mean that much to people. Like he started off in 50s TV, like people is like Sidney Lumet and John Frankenheimer and people like that. And then the film he made just before this was The Illustrated Man, right? The Ray Bradbury adaptation with Rod Steiger. So his filmography is very like, it looks like the filmography of a director for hire rather than
Mm.
like an auteur or something like that.
Right.
So the name Jack Smite doesn't necessarily bring, even though he has directed some interesting films and some huge hits. Like he directed Airport 1975.
Mm.
So he was considered a safe pair of hands, but it
Mm.
wasn't a hit. Um, but yeah, it is an odd one. I would have thought because all those other Stacey Keach films like Fat City and the Dion Brothers and all those other films he made, they've gained cult traction over the years.
Mm.
I suspect we're probably just maybe on the cusp of this. I think it's only going to take someone's going to put this out on Blu-ray, right?
Mm.
And I think there'll probably be a lot. There's some boutique label will put this out, and there'll be bells and whistles and a commentary track, and maybe they'll interview Stacey Keach or because he's still around.
Mm.
And I suspect it might then gain. I think a lot more people probably feel like I do towards it than you do towards it. I think.
Mm. Yeah.
I get the
I
feeling
think, I mean, yeah, I think generally
that
speaking, they would.
cult thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be a good bit of a cult thing, And I mean, even on IMDb, all the reviews are all like, "Wow, I found this. I couldn't believe I found this movie, and it's so good." Da, 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 da. But
Right.
yeah, I think it was pretty good, but I think it needed some work. I think so.
Right. Yes, I think also with films that are underseen, there is that sense
Mm.
of discovery, right? If you've seen
Yeah,
what there's,
sure.
because I'm sure it's probably played now and again on late night TV or something like that, right? People have seen it. I think there
Right.
was a VHS release in the UK in the very early days of video. Um, so there is that kind of thing as well. When it's like it's my secret little precious little
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I found kind of thing. So that obviously that makes and it's definitely most of the IMDb reviews are in that they're like look what I
Sure.
found kind of
What
thing.
I found, yeah.
Yeah,
Aren't I cool for finding this movie, right?
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. But I for me, it lived up because those films don't always live up, right? But for me, I have to say this really did live up. Also, this will probably mean nothing to you, but someone out there might find this of interest. Claire Brennan, who was the star of another cult film from 1967 called She Freak, which was a kind of a remake of our favorite Freaks,
Mhm.
set in a carnival. Uh, the star of that film, Claire Brennan, is in The Traveling Executioner in the important role of woman passerby.
Ooh.
And you've got what's her name? Catherine
McGregor.
yes, of Little House on the Prairie fame.
Hmm.
Uh, so that's kind of interesting that she's in this. Um, yeah, and I think that's better. I definitely would. I would if you're running out of. There's a certain type of like this is a very 70s film, right? Like
Hmm.
this
Yeah,
is the kind of film they made in the 70s. They don't make films like this now.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
And it's very anachronistic in a way. Like all the characters and Stacey Keach's hair and the way they speak, it doesn't scream 1918.
No, it definitely doesn't.
No,
Yeah. I
no.
remember I had the same reaction. Like at some point, like in the middle of it, I was like, what year is this set in? Yeah. I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, it was so all
yeah.
over the place in that way. So
But it's interesting. There were a lot of post-hippie 70s films like that, right? That did kind of period, but didn't
it
really do
was,
the.
it was
It's not
in
about the
some ways, it was
period.
kind of like an episode of Star Trek where everyone is like hey, groovy man, but it's set, like 1,000 years in the future, right? Like,
Well, who knows? 1,000 years in the future,
yeah,
maybe that will be
maybe
the palette of
it'll
the
come
day.
back. Right? Yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
hope they do bring back those super short skirts that they wear on the
All
Star
right.
Trek
And
place. That would be a step in the
I'm
right.
sure misogyny will never go away. I'm sure.
No, 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 not if
It's
I'm
time-
alive, goddamn, not on my watch.
it's timeless. Right.
Yeah. So if you run out of, and if you're the type of person who's into this kind of thing, you know exactly what I mean when I say this. If you run out of those 70s movies to watch,
Mm.
then and you haven't seen this one, give Traveling Executioner a
Mm.
go.
Sure. Yeah. Actually, before we go, maybe we could even maybe save this for our next episode. But I just wanted to ask you quickly about Stacy Keach as an actor,
Right.
the appeal. Because I mean, notably, I think he's the only actor I can think of that has a cleft palate. Um,
Well, there's that young British guy now, isn't there? Who actually, and I don't think it's just because of the cleft palate. Always reminds me, he looks a bit like Stacey Keach.
okay, but I mean, of course, maybe he's more recent. But Stacey Keach traditionally has been the only actor that I could ever think of that had a cleft palate, and especially in the times of like the 60s and 70s, where everyone was really like hired based on how they look and some of that. Why do you think Stacey Keach had such like how do you think he ever broke in as being like a leading man, star power kind of thing? Other than the fact that he's a decent actor, right? So,
Yeah,
but
I think he did start. I think he is like obviously traditionally he's in the more character actor mold, right? But
right.
I think he has such charisma, right? Um, that I think yeah, and as well, a lot of his leading roles are in smaller, weird kind of indie films, right?
Mm,
I mean, he did play plenty of second bananas in
mm,
other things. He's also recently in. He was in that miniseries Tokyo Trial about um, the trial that took place in occupied Japan after the Second World War. He's in that.
mm.
I can't remember. Does he play General MacArthur in that actually? Um, good good miniseries. I kind of no, he's the narrator.
Mm.
Yeah, so he's yeah, so um yeah, so yeah, he has played well, I know for instance, I know what you've chosen. I won't reveal it here, but I know
Right.
what you've chosen for our next. And
Mm.
he's in that for what, like 2 minutes or something, I
Is
think.
he?
Yeah,
I haven't seen it in years. I can't even remember. So,
yeah, but at the same time, he's the star of Slave of the Cannibal God. Um,
right.
and I'm just looking through his interesting. The thing I chose, he's a star in, but yeah, he's in The Killer Inside Me. He stars in that. He played Barabbas in the 1977 miniseries of
Yeah.
Jesus of
Yeah.
Nazareth.
Using Nazareth. Yeah.
I didn't know that. So and he's in Fat City, and yeah, so I don't know. He is actually, you're right. He does star in more things than you might think, actually.
Yeah. He's just such an unassuming uh leading man, especially in the time when people it was all image and stuff, right? Especially I mean nowadays people tend to be, I think generally people tend to be more cast kind of on their abilities or like interesting looks. Whereas, kind of in the 60s and 70s, it was all very like beautiful people and stuff like that. So I'm just curious how he became so prominent or so
Yeah,
recognizable. So
I don't know.
yeah.
Of course, we forgot his big one as well. Of course, in the 80s, he was Mike Hammer as well.
Mike Hammer, yeah, right. So yeah.
Um,
Yeah, recurring. He did like three or four different shows called Make Hammer. I think they kept coming back. I
yeah,
think, right?
because I remember it was funny because that show was really popular in the UK as well. And didn't he got busted. He got busted either leaving or entering the UK in possession of cocaine, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he ended up in jail. And the headline was "Hammer in the Slammer." I remember.
Oh, they had to do it, right? They
Yeah,
had to
of
be done,
course.
right?
Yeah, yeah. How could you not? Um,
Yeah.
so no, it's a good question. It's a good question. I just put it down to because he is. I've always liked him. Like since I was a kid, he does have this real likability, especially when he's playing
Sure. Yeah.
right? He has that roguish charm. he
Yeah,
has
I
that
mean,
slight
I mean,
everyman
he's
thing.
the like the preeminent rogue in this movie. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
yeah.
But he has a
Look up
slight
rogue in the
everyman
dictionary.
charm,
It's this
doesn't he?
character, right? So,
He's got an everyman charm, and I suppose the cleft palate might help with that a little bit because it kind of almost brings him down a little bit from being
mhm,
too charismatic or too handsome.
right,
He
sure,
has a
yeah.
slight flaw, and that
Mm,
kind of makes him a bit more. I don't know. It's interesting you bring it up, and I've never really thought like it's there. It's front and center. He doesn't hide it. It's always there.
yeah.
But oddly enough, I don't think like if someone said, Ex "Who's Stacy Keach?" and you try to explain who he is, I wouldn't have thought to say, he's the dude with the cleft palate. Do you
Oh,
know?
really? That's
Yeah.
exactly how I would describe
Oh,
it,
okay.
right? So,
Uh,
yeah. So I don't know, but not that. I mean, I'm glad. I mean, it's like I wish there was more actors with sort of like real recognizable or not what do you say like
a blemish, I guess.
not abnormalities, but like things that make them stand out, right?
Yeah.
Something that makes them different. But I wish there was more of that, because there's so many like movies where like people look so similar. Like, wait, which person was that again? I mean, and when we get to our Halloween episode, I have that episode. I already watched one episode and
Oh, okay.
I remember looking. I was like, which one? Who's that again? Like, what is it? Because people look so similar. But so I'm glad that people have differences, but at the same time, it's sort of like I'm just curious how he got through that or how it became a thing because or why it wasn't a thing for him
Right.
because
Yeah. As far as
I
I
think a
know,
lot of people probably would have been turned down. No, you have a cleft palate. Go away. We'll never cast you, right? So
I don't know. As far as
I'd
I know,
love to
it's
hear his
never been
story.
an issue for him. I've never heard him talk about it really.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, it does. Yeah, he does. But I think he would stand out anyway, regardless, because he does.
Yeah, sure. I guess, yeah. Yeah.
Of course, two
So,
people who don't look anything alike, despite IMDb keep trying to tell you, is what's her name and what's her name. They look totally different, right? Um, what are they
I
called?
know exactly who you're talking about,
I
and they look
forget their
exactly
names. I forget their names, but
what's her
they're
name? What's
so they're so different. They're so totally different. One's
it's so it's very, very
oh,
similar.
one is like pointy and sharp, and the other one's very
Not at all, right?
round.
They look very, very similar. Yeah. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. But
Anyway,
anyway,
I'm glad we
but
agreed.
whoever's watching here doesn't know, and they can remain a
They
mystery for
couldn't
them.
care less. No one's watching this all the way
Yeah,
to
no one
the
cares. No one watches
ages
those.
ago. No, no, no.
Yeah. Hello, if you're
Yeah,
watching. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't think you are,
Not
but
that you
yeah,
did, you liar.
you
Yeah,
liar.
fuck off, you
You're not. There's no one here.
liar,
Right? So
lying fucking cunts.
we're just talking into the void, just the two of us.
And we'll
Yeah.
do some more of that next
All
time.
right. See ya. Bye.